pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
Let us take a moment to remember the 10 police officers and 8 firefighters that have passed since our last board meeting.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Well, we find ourselves here once again, the final meeting of 2023, getting ready to go into 2024. It was a great year at that. So let us move into our meeting and get through this one as we have all the others. First and foremost, do we have anybody speaking from the public?
No request to speak from the public.
No requests. Okay. We have our consent agenda and the minutes from November 8th, 2023, which are in your packets for your review, as well as November 14th, which are in the packet for your review, as well as the December 4th, 2023 special and executive session meeting minutes are all part of the consent agenda. I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda has passed. Next up is our financial report and updates from Director of Finance, Gabe Boldra. Gabe, are you on the line?
I am, Mr. Chair. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Director Cooperman, welcome back. Looking forward to seeing you. Apologize. We're not. Yes, of course. Thank you. Apologize I'm not there today. We've got 20 board meetings in 4 days, so I'm trying to do as many as I can. Starting off with the financials for the month of November, you'll see our property tax collection was at $2,773,000. That was $184,000 under what we had projected for the month. However, you'll see when we get to the year-to-date numbers, we're doing okay, actually ahead of what we projected from a year-to-date perspective. Non-levy revenue was pretty much right in line with budget. We brought in $259,000 for the month. It was $8,500 under budget, but things like our ambulance revenue and CR revenue, ambulance was over by $22,000. CRR was under slightly for the month. However, that was offset, frankly, by other miscellaneous revenues that we received that in the month. Looking at the expenses, personnel is at $1,375,000. We were slightly over for the month by about $21,000. A couple things attributed to that variance. One, we had some wildland deployments in the month that weren't anticipated, as well as just some overtime wages that had occurred. Buildings and land was in line with budget at $27,997. Vehicles and equipment was over budget by $19,266, predominantly related to maintenance on our vehicles. Communication IT was at $93,313, over budget by $29,000. One of the big drivers of the variance on communication IT was fees to remove Speed Connect items and repairs to our towers from some of the Speed Connect things within the tower. Managerial was the last category at $159,751, or over budget by $30,000. And some training, actually a fire extinguisher training prop for prevention is what attributed to that variance for the month of November. Any questions so far?
Nope. No.
All right. Year to date, we're at $12,361,000 in total revenue, which is over budget by $27,603. As I mentioned, our property tax collection is ahead by 142,000. However, non-levy revenues are behind by about 115,000. One of those big drivers on those non-levy revenues is our wildland. While we did have some last month, we've not had as much wildland as we've anticipated for the year. And so that's what's kind of bringing down the overall revenue numbers. Our ambulance revenue is doing strong through the month of November. We're actually 108,000 over budget on that. And interest earnings are about 130,000 over budget through the month of November. So all those things are doing well, despite wildland not being not performing. The advantage though with wildland is when we don't have the revenue, we also don't have those correlating expenses. On the expense side, we're at 8,457,000 in total expense. We are under budget by 576,000. Personnel being the majority of that variance at 557,000 under budget. But communications and IT is over budget by 20,000. And again, some related to the work that was done this past month. Also, some of that function of timing on our annual subscriptions and things like that. As we go through the year, we'll see that number come kind of back closer in line with the overall budget. Next slide. As far as a percentage, we've expended 38% of our budget with 62% remaining. And then a breakdown, personnel is our highest expense at 83% of our total expenditures, followed by operations at 8%, and communications at 6%, and managerial at 3%. And then finally, year over year, we ended the month with 19 million total cash on hand. That's an increase of 2,495,000 over the last year. In addition, our other assets increased from 24.7 million to 25.5 million. A lot of that is a function of our investment in our capital assets. And overall, total liabilities did increase slightly from 32.5 million to 32.6 million. And a majority of that is related to timing on payroll liabilities. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Questions? No. Gabe, a quick question for you. With the amount of cash we have on hand on this last screen, and this question has usually been asked a couple times in the course of the year, should any of that be pointed towards lowering that unfunded liability with our pensions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's a great question. It's definitely something we could look at. I guess the one kind of position we've always taken is we have real cash. That pension liability, while it's a liability, it costs us money, is not a real debt. It's not a real liability. We can pay off that liability tomorrow and have a pension liability again the next day. And so we've always kind of taken the position with our districts that we advise to retain the cash. And until we see stability in our pension system, retain the cash and then utilize those funds within our own control until we see that stability. And when I say stability, a good example is pension numbers came out recently, and our pension liability for next year, give me 1 second to pull it up.
Okay.
Our pension liability for next year went from, got me on the fly here. So our contribution rate went from 44.8 to 46.3. And our unfunded liability went from 25 million to 26 million. And so there's still significant swings in our pension contribution rates. And when I say that, I'm coming from experience with the state pension here, other public safety pensions in other states. And most of those see less than a 1% change in contribution rate year over year. Whereas, as I kind of mentioned on ours, for next year, we've already got a increase of, just under 2%. And so when you look at our numbers, some people may say, well, okay, 2% is not a big number. But when you look at 10 million in salaries and wages, it's close to $200,000 impact to our budget. Again, with some of this volatility, it just, to me, makes more sense to keep the money in the district coffers, continue to monitor, continue to save. And then we see stability, take that money, put it forward to start paying down that liability and lowering our annual pension costs.
Got it. But that is something that you look at consistently.
It is something that we look at very closely. This time of year is our Christmas, where we get to see what the pension rates are going to be for next year. And I always hope for good news, and always seem to find something a little different.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does. The one last piece I have, Mr. Chair, is we are still working through the audit. Because of the ARPA money that we did receive, we're going through what's called a single audit, which is a little bit more in depth on the program that received federal funding, which is payroll. And so we were hoping to be wrapped up for this month's presentation, but in order to give you guys time to review and allow the audit firm to finish wrapping up their work, we'll go ahead and we'll have the audit for you at the January board meeting. And I am happy to report we did get the GFOA award for our FY22 audit. And so we'll have that certificate and stuff to include in the audit draft that gets presented to you at the next month's board meeting.
That's good news, and it's just the show of a lot of good hard work, and we'll have to clear some wall space for another plaque. So, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that said, I'll move to approve the November 2023 financial report as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the financial report for November 2023 has been approved.
Thank you, guys. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas.
You too. Thank you.
Two.
Take care, Gabe.
Okay, next item on our agenda is staff items, which basically.
Correct. All right. Start off with administrative services.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, good segue with the plaque there. We just received our Toys for Tots plaque again for our certificate of appreciation for being a drop location and having that annual event. All the toys have been collected, so thanks to everyone who brought some by and helped spread the good word. We love seeing that, and they're very appreciative. This year we also were a drop location for Adopt a Grandparent, which was part of Aging Care, helped put that together. So similar with the Toys for Tots, they do a tree and they've been managed. And then some of those rehab facilities don't get a lot of visitors, and maybe they don't get Christmas presents either. And so it's a lot of blankets and gloves and reading glasses and things like that. And we were a drop location. They were delighted to have it. The people who were bringing those things for the elderly were really happy to come and participate in the program. So we look forward to helping them again. They have an event in the spring that they'd like to do the opposite. So instead of it's cold right now and they're cold, some of them don't have a means of cooling. So they're going to be doing a fan event in the spring. So look forward to that and doing that again. Thanks to Kim and everyone who participated in the holiday potluck, which is a great success. I think we all agree that it's a nice time to come together with operations and staff and the board and get to know each other a little bit better. So we're happy that started up again. We're always coordinating that. As far as for staffing updates for administration, we're working on our process improvements. So we've been going through that. the audit process has helped us a little bit with some of our payroll processes, retail, and then buttoning up with JBG, some of our finance processes as well, and going through some of those. So as I cover for Stephanie when she's out, and I just did a big uniform thing, is making sure that we've got this all regimented and organized so that anyone can do it if someone's out. So, those pieces have been, a really good thing. And that wraps up my report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we'll just keep it moving along.
Yeah, I have one question, in the adoptive grandparent
Yeah.
program, did we have success, or were people dropping things off, or?
We did. We had a full, so it was similar with the cardboard box there. We had a nice full one. She grabbed some extra blankets. Lots of the staff members just brought blankets and socks and gloves and things like that. I haven't gotten any of the word on the results of that. I do understand that there are maybe, several dozen that didn't get, in the Tri-City area that didn't get their tag taken, but they did get some cash donations, just like Toys for Tots does, so that they can go and purchase, some of those things. So, they were really delighted at our location as a drop location, so, we hope to get some feedback like we do from the other program and find out how we can do better and help next time.
Good, okay,
As
super.
you know, oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Trees were bare very soon.
Good.
Yeah, the people were taken off the tag.
Good.
They wasn't a long time that they stayed on.
Excellent. Sometimes they don't get returned, so we always remind, if you take a tag off of the tree and you don't supply that gift, then no one else can either. So we appreciate the good thoughts that turn that into an action, and we're here to help.
Okey-doke. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
I just have one sort of, I guess, a question, suggestion, that I thought the holiday potluck was great, but it really only involved the guys here at Station One. And I'm wondering, as we look at future events, if we can move it around the district so that the other guys get to participate. I mean, I know Station Five is probably not gonna be the best place to do it, but, yeah, but other than that, I think there's probably space to do it, and it just seems to me like it would be more engaging of the whole team.
I second that.
It would, we just have to coordinate a little more in-depth, because right now we can pop over here and then pop back to work, so we'd have to coordinate. But that's definitely something that would be cool.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief?
All right, moving on to operations.
I'm gonna start with telecom. And so, there are basically 5 kind of major areas for work that's been ongoing and one for future work. And the first area is communication infrastructure projects. So, one of the things Bob's been working on is making sure that DPS, when they go and replace all their equipment on Porcupine Mountain, that they only replace their equipment and don't mess up any of our equipment. Which, it seems simple when if you're dealing with the person that's gonna do the work, but that's not how that goes. It's all contracted out, and so we've been paying a lot of attention to that to make sure that they, not only that they don't, mess up any of our equipment, but also things like, and this happened at the airport too, when they set up a crane to do the work, that they don't put the crane in front of our microwave link, and then block the microwave link that takes our information back from dispatch, things like that, so. That is the DPS project is the major infrastructure project going on. Justin Bruce is continuing to undergo training, the beginning of his training cycle. They worked on mobile antennas, bands, and correct mounts for the microwave stuff, probably because they're doing that microwave work. And then, as was stated, Justin had a family emergency, and he's absent right now, but he will be back. And we have that on we're confident he will be back. Operational support and maintenance, work for the Sedona Fire, or the Sedona Police Department, beg your pardon. Antenna issues on some of the apparatus, and then working on setting up, the new CRR position, getting them everything that they need to be able to function at the station and in the field. And then working on, one of the things earlier this weekend, I think last week, was a switch that went out that control our internet and the phones and everything here, and so that was one of those Christmas time surprises that they had to jump on. There's a legal and vendor coordination is what the category I've called this, and continue to work with Trifecta and Speed Connect to have those issues dealt with, and they should be receiving the demand letters and continue to move forward on that process. Working with DEA to remove their equipment from Mingus Mountain, so DEA will no longer lease our site. They don't need it anymore, so making sure that they get their equipment off of there so it doesn't create any interference problems. And once again, that they only get their equipment off of there is a big deal. And then Josh, we've been working on some technical equipment improvements and upgraded and continuing to work on migration issues with some of the software. Looking forward to next month, the NPR upgrade, and then the deployment of the CER, the multi-purpose room, I should say. I was thinking NPR when I read that, but the multi-purpose room upgrade, assist with that. Working on the new switch deployment for the airport and for Station 4, and continue that work at Porcupine Mountain. Josh intends to complete the board member iPad upgrades and then set up the new Radio Tech PC position for the new Radio Tech that's coming on board. So get everybody up and operational, and then continue to work with the airport. They're doing some work on the airport, the AWAS, what does it stand for? Automated Weather, yeah, the weather system. That historically has been one of those things that has created interference for us before. Remember, we've had to move off of a tower for that. So making sure as they do that upgrade project, that again, it doesn't cause any interference for our system. So Bob has split his work, and imagine Josh has had to help with this, between planning for the next thing, dealing with the fires that need to be put out, and then also making sure that it's coordinated on other stuff so it doesn't add to the list of things that need to be corrected. I'm sure he's going to be very thankful when the two radio techs are here and integrated into the system, so we can have him, and Chief Mazzullis will as well, operate at that higher level, coordinating things, and less having to switch hats midstream like he's had to do for several months now, several years now. I think, Josh, was that a good assessment of what you guys are up to? All right, yeah. Thumbs up from Josh. In human resources, so recruitment, telecom, new hire position, one's filled, and the new radio tech, the second radio tech is still in pre-employment, and we're currently coordinating a start date. Expect that to be sometime in January, get that person here, that's exciting. We're also TRT member recruitment, the letters, I think they close January 3rd. So internal recruitment for the TRT process, they have to submit letters of interest, and then there's a competitive process, which Baker may go into more, so I won't talk anything else about it. And then our annual SFD awards nomination is in process. It's a curious thing, awards nominations, because guys, I don't want, we're just doing what we do. I've never had anyone turn down an award when they got it though. So, yeah. While I think there's a hesitance to admit that the recognition feels good, I think it's appreciated. And so making sure that we take that time to honor the ones that have done exceptional work, both in the support and in the operations section, it's important for morale. I think it's important for everybody. The weather stuff, I'll talk about this. We are starting to transition, and hopefully it will be a long transition, into a wetter pattern at least for the next 7 days. They're talking about moisture, first low coming in a little lower, so Sedona actually do better than the higher country with this next storm, with moisture starting Wednesday, and it actually rained a little bit today, and then into the weekend. And then Christmas Day, there's another system diving down. If it stays inland, the current path is, it'll be drier when it gets here. If it is able to get some of that subtropical moisture from that last storm, then there's a chance for a white Christmas above 7,000 feet. So we'll have to wait and see. What we need to see is something that's indicative of like a major pattern change, though. We've been very dry. Since last spring, we've had below normal precipitation every month. And the soil moisture is starting to show that, the drought index is starting to show that. So we get some snowpack on the ground and get things that start recharging that aquifer, that we'll be doing good, but no major signals for that in the future. The last thing about significant events is I wanted to talk about the picture that you guys got in your packet and the thing I did. So I went to The Hague last month over Thanksgiving and attended the NATO Command and Control Center for Excellence seminar. As I was invited to attend, matter of fact, when they invited me, I asked them, "Are you sure you meant to invite me?" And I guess we meant to invite you. And so that seems weird, right? That's not a fire thing, that's a military thing. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of what I learned and how it benefits Sedona Fire District. So everything was about decision-making process. That was the whole function of this, was decision-making in uncertain environments. So exposure to that decision-making process and challenges and the different strategies that NATO's facing and how they're addressing those. A lot of similarities between what we deal with in an interagency world. Their interagency group is designed for collective defense. Our interagency groups are designed primarily for wildfire defense and response to large incidents. But how you coordinate that, same issues with interoperability, same issues with people contributing their fair share to make it where it is actually a cooperative venture and not one entity sustaining the other entities. That part was very informative. And then the collaboration to talk to people about how they solve different problems with command and control and communications. And I'll just drill down into one of those real quick. And then also, you know, what I felt like I actually provided something too. So the cross-domain learning and the insights into decentralized command, how we operate on incidents with decentralized command on large fires, how we operate on the fire stations in this. And a lot of those characteristics and those attributes are transferable. Matter of fact, a lot of them, frankly, we stole from the military in the first place. And then we've kind of went off, like Australia, right? The animals were maybe the same fighting that at one time, and then they went and did their own thing. We went and did our own thing and come back together and sharing ideas on how we've made improvements or how we've increased the effectiveness of systems was useful. The part that is, because it's relevant to something that the board, I showed an interest in, and something that we have another meeting tomorrow about, was this notion of gaps and friction. And so, right, for the last several months and up through January, one of my primary efforts is going to be job descriptions, is getting these position descriptions, getting alignment, making sure that we have clarity of role and that things are grouped in a way that makes sense so we can be as efficient as possible. So you think about it, and people like autonomy, right? When you're working in an agency, you'd rather have some autonomy to be able to go do your job and know what your job is than to have somebody telling you every day that you're supposed to do this, supposed to do that. Well, the more you go up with alignment, then the more you can provide autonomy, because everybody understands what they're supposed to do and move forward the same way. And so there's three gaps that we discussed that I think are relevant. The first one is the knowledge gap. And for us in the emergency services, it's the information that's crucial to response. So that knowledge gap is the difference between what we want to achieve, so the board gives us an objective, and then the plan we define on how we're going to achieve that. Understanding the different ways that we can do that, what the best way to do that is, all that, closing that gap is going to help us to become more effective at coming up with a plan that's viable and that makes sense. And that once we implement, we're going to go, oh man, we should have thought about the fact that that takes 10 more people than we have to implement that plan or whatever. And then, so the processes, policy, and organizational matrices, there's all three of those different areas that we're touched with the work we're doing, trying to figure out the best way to close that knowledge gap. And then the second one was the alignment gap, and it's the alignment between order and action. So the next part is, right, you got this plan, and now you got to get everybody on the same page and swimming in the same direction and moving forward. So clear leader's intent, making sure everybody understands what it is that we're trying to accomplish, what the plan's supposed to accomplish, because you can have a plan that doesn't necessarily clearly define the end state, and then people, you know, say, all right, go over that top of that hill. All right, what do you want me to do when you get over the top of that hill? Well, go over the top of the next hill. And that's hard because the third gap, and that is the effects gap. So if we don't make sure that we have good alignment through our matrices, through our policies, and through our practices, then when you go over the top of that next hill, the person's going to look back and say, what am I supposed to do next? And then you got to sit there and say, and what does that do? Then next thing you know, you're centralizing control, right? Because you feel like, I got to tell everybody what they've got to do. Those guys don't even know what's up. When in reality, the reason they don't know what's up is because you did a poor job defining the end state, what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and you didn't make it clear, which is the effects gap, on what their operating space was. So how far left and right can you go, are you expected to go, to solve the problem without coming back up and saying, hey, what am I supposed to do next? And there's tangible examples, I think, as we go forward over the first quarter, at least with the tasks and stuff that I have, where you're going to see where we will take meaningful steps, I believe, to close all three of those gaps. And seeing the way that tied back into this old Prussian dude named von Moltke that talked about that stuff, it was fascinating because some of the things that we try to define in the fire service and elsewhere, I think we do ourselves some favors when we look beyond our world and find out, man, there's some people that have defined these pretty well in other domains. So, yeah, that is the end of my report.
Do you have any questions for the chief? You know, I have an inquiry or a point to make, is that it sounds in the description of your attempt to finish all the job descriptions, that it's been ongoing for a long, long time, but it's probably more defined now than it ever has been, in that you've got a clear focus on where you want to go with this to get this job done and get on to something else. But it has been a long time coming, and I'd like to think we're just about done with that. But it also ties into what the chief described earlier at a previous meeting, with his strategy and not strategy, tactics, but strategic plan and what he wants to do. And so I can see the two, at least on this particular objective, is tied together. I don't know what the answer is for a lot of strategies or objectives, or a few. It seems like the fewer you have, the broader they are. The more you have, the more specific they can be. But I think somewhere in between is a blend that you need. Because I've seen it go both ways here in this district. And it seems as though everybody knows what they're doing, knows what their job is. Maybe as we get newer and newer people on board, we're not relying on those experiences that they've had to define what their job description is. Now they're looking for something on what to do. How do I do what I'm supposed to be doing? So I look forward on you putting that all together. The weather patterns you talked about with this December, this winter we're in right now, is this kind of more of the tail of the El Nino that we had during the summer?
It's supposed to ramp up. It's the climatology said January through March, above normal precipitation, about average temperatures. January, February, March. So that's what's supposed to happen. And technically, the La Nina and El Nino both have more effects on the winter months, the January, February, March months, than they tend to have on the other months of the year. It just, I think because we didn't have very good monsoons, to me at least, it's been a long time coming.
Right.
Yeah, and I think really that's, if I remind myself what the climatology says, we're not missing anything yet. But then when I think back to how bad our monsoons were, it's like, come on, hurry up, get here, you know?
Well, the last thing I'd like to point out is that I appreciate the fact that there's got to be a respectful approach to those other agencies that are working in and around our towers, and the ability to professionally say, be careful, because you may ding it and it could be a $1 million repair. So I appreciate you coming forward, and it sounds to me like you guys do have a pretty good working relationship in getting the job done, and keep whatever damage to a minimum.
Yeah, that's Bob. He's the one coordinating all that. That's really, I mean, ideally, I think, I believe Chief Mazzulla should agree with this. That's what we want to be able to do more of, is future and out, because right now, he's certainly back on his heels. It's a reactionary mode. It's whack-a-mole. And of course, when people are messing with our towers, that becomes the mole you're going to whack today. But having been able to get back where he goes from reactionary to planning and then to thinking about what might happen next, and is actually doing some forecasting about where to be ready for. If we move that way across multiple domains, we will be better off. Our effort will become more action than just activity.
Okay, that's good.
Well, and I'd like to add, with our, specific to our IT stuff, but lessons learned from across the board, and with some of the ADOT construction and rock mitigation work recently, that we meet with our government partners. They do a description of the work to be done, and then when it goes to the action stage, like with the blasting, some of the contractors' blasting plan didn't align with the one we were presented, so it created some challenges. And so, point with that is, with our IT stuff, while Bob has great relationships with DPS, DEA, all our partner agencies, goes over the plan. At the end of the day, they hire a contractor to go out and do the work. and, oh, this darn cable's in the way, let me move it, and that's our cable. And Bob's attention to detail is critical, but it's, you don't just shoot up to Porcupine Mountain, you know, and so that burns 3/4 of his day, just transiting to it, and then, to meet, and then, so it does take away from forward progress, and having these new folks enter in the mix will be huge.
Well, thank you very much for your.
All right, I'm gonna play Dory. As mentioned, she's doing her civic duty, selected for a testosterone smuggling trial this morning. And, they anticipate it to be wrapped up by Thursday, but, it's what it is. CR has been busy this month doing, putting the good new props to work, doing, a lot of fire extinguisher training with the schools, and then we're getting multiple requests from hotels and different businesses, and, which we have pre-COVID, the pre-COVID era, or the COVID era is over, and we're definitely rolling quickly back into pre-COVID, and, really ramping up all the stuff we used to do, and that device that we got is ideal because we can do it at the schools, we can do it everywhere. And the old way was they'd lug a propane tank with a pan, fill it with water, and then light it on fire, and then have to discharge a real fire extinguisher. There's costs associated with it, and there's a mess associated with it. And kids with live fire extinguishers isn't always the best mix. So it's a really good way to teach the usage of the safety equipment and do it for larger groups. Blasting, I'll try not to butcher it, but the water tank off of 179, I think they've got one more blast, the sump blast, they call it. And then ADOT is finished in the canyon with all their blasting. And then the city, I think they have one more blast this week, but I'm not gonna say that's done because that's quite a road project. So, but the end of year pre-holiday blasting will be wrapped up this week. So, and to my knowledge, I think we had one formal complaint about the blasting, and then one that was unsubstantiated. So, and that's credit to the contractors and the partnership. And our CR has been busy. They've been run out every morning doing that. They also participated in the bike rodeo last weekend. That was a neat success. If you saw some of the Facebook posts, a lot of kids got bikes. And it's a pretty cool deal. And moving on to the safety message about, you know, if you've got a portable heat source in your house, you don't have central heating, make sure you got everything 3 feet away from your heater. Never use your oven to heat your home. We have periodically responded to homes in the community where they have all the burners on, and that's what they're using to heat their home. It's not safe. And people should have their chimneys cleaned and heating equipment inspected every year. It's an inexpensive ounce of prevention. And portable heaters with timers are ideal. And then, of course, getting an inexpensive CO alarm from local hardware store is a huge, huge plus. And lastly, Brian Russell, our new-ish inspector, has just been, it's like he's worked here for 5 years. You know, he's in the mix. He seems to have an appropriate level of comfort with what he's been assigned, and he's just smiles and doing his job.
Good.
Getting to know the crews, and it's a good deal. If there aren't any questions, I'll move on to operational support report.
I have one personal question.
Yeah.
If you don't use your fireplace, how often should you have it inspected?
There's a few variables. I mean, if you've got an old brick chimney, then there's potential for degradation with, you know, water seepage and stuff. If you've got a metal flue, and depending on when your house is built, those things stay pretty solid. It's just a pipe in the wall. And but yeah, the biggest thing with the chimney inspection and cleaning is the creosote buildup. And it, you know, when you don't have complete combustion, over time, if you have that creosote buildup, it'll flash and burn it once it has a heat source. And then your chimney, everything in your chimney will burn independent of whatever you have in the fireplace.
And very hot.
Yeah, and it gets very hot.
I would suggest that if you ever use it again, if you ever intend to use it, you should have it inspected before you use it. 'Cause
Yeah.
even ours that we burn 10 cords of wood a year, like birds will get in there and nest and.
That's what I was wondering.
And I would agree, if it's been dormant for a while, pack rats, birds, you name it, could make it their home. And, I mean, they'll cook off, but it could block it too.
Eventually.
I really don't wanna go through the noises.
That's smooth, chief, real smooth.
Yeah. No, that would make me a little sick.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, report. Is there any other questions for the chief on the CRR? Community risk, CRR. One of those combinations.
Yeah.
Okay, chief, back at you.
All right, past month, Buzz was working a ton with our mental health counselor, lining up peer support trainings for this next coming months. We've trained a core group of peer support members, kind of refreshed our peer support squad, if you will, because, a lot of our prior peer supporters have moved up into different positions, and, I have no peers. I'm the only fire chief, so I can't really support peers. And then Buzz is one of our big peer supporters, and being in charge of stuff, you know, we're less likely to be the person somebody would go to, and more likely to be the person that has to start part of the process if something goes south. So, we've been working to rebuild our internal peer support group, and then in the coming months, we're working with, the agencies on the other side of the hill, and then wrapping in the surrounding police agencies, and we're gonna further build that peer support team. The idea being, if we have a large tragedy here, our peer supporters will be useless in helping our people if 50% of our people are involved in whatever. We have a good working, same team approach, and we have a major critical event, we can bring guys over from PD or from CAFMA and just have a really good, solid mental health support group. And just, been working with her to fine tune some of the resources they have. He's met with our CPR instructor, and I say instructor because we don't have a group of instructors, and, COVID expired them out, so we're rebuilding and relaunching in January our public-facing CPR program. And, gonna fill a lot of requests we're having from hotels and a lot of the businesses to get that rolling again. And, he's working with labor to stand up the EMS committee to get rolling on, kind of evaluating our EMS process, and then also working with the hospital. If you have kept up with the news, and I spoke about it before, NAH, their rezoning of the site in Flagstaff was voted down by the community, and so, Dave, as the CEO, Dave recently stated that they're gonna pour hundreds of millions of dollars into the Verde Valley healthcare system. And so, Buzz will use to best advantage that information to leverage, you know, things that will, I believe, improve service to our community. And, last heavy hit he's really been working on, before I get into the kickball, is, him and our mechanic and two of our apparatus committee folks went out last week to Wisconsin to do what's called the pre-build meeting for our two new fire trucks that you ordered a year plus ago. And so the significance of this is it starts the timer, and then the foundation will be laid, if you will, within 2 months, and then the expectation is by early fall we'll take receipt of those trucks. But what it involves is they fly out to the facility, and they get a ream of paper, and then they spent 3 10-hour days and essentially go through, okay, here's the driver's door. It's gonna be 42 inches wide by 48 inches tall. It's gonna have this manufacturer for the latch, this manufacturer for this hinge. Then they go to the back door, then they go to the cabinets. They build the whole truck piece by piece, compartment by compartment, verifying our specs. And the benefit of doing that in-house and not doing an online meeting is, if they get to a sticking point with a design feature on the truck, they walk out to the bay where there's a couple hundred of them being built, and they look at real time at what's being built. No, we want to configure it like this, and so they went through that process. learned a ton. They did find out some neat tidbits for the geeks in the room. The manufacturer we purchased our trucks from is the largest manufacturer in the country right now. They're producing 3,000 fire trucks a year, which equates to 9 a day. And while we got them for around $740,000 and had a 26-month build time, they're now quoting $940,000 and a 46-month build time, even at a rate of producing 3,000 vehicles a year. So, we didn't know we were as fortunate as we were when we ordered them, but we definitely, I feel a lot better about the decision to order one early now than I even more so than I did when we did it, because that would have really thrown our fleet replacement program into a lurch if we hadn't forecasted in such a way. And then lastly, I'll punt to Mr. Spinelli and give us our GIS stuff.
So I provided this to.
You're gonna need a microphone, sir, so you can be heard on the recording?
Here in the room.
Yeah, so I'm in contact with Chief Lukowski all the time, and just kind of high level provided some support to an after action review that took place up on Elysian Drive. Had a bunch of CRR work related to the blasting projects. I've been working a lot with Brian Espial on application development and surveys and forms that are kind of streamlining some process here. And that is using our GIS software, and kind of forcing us to take another look at licensing and ensuring that we're sort of right-sized, that everybody in the organization that needs access to things has the access they need. So that's what we're working on currently. Spoke with ESRI, or Esri, the software maker, and cleared up some questions with their tech support yesterday. That is then going to make it into a little proposal document that I'm sure some of the chiefs will read. I am also just kind of high level cooking up. I'm thinking strategic plan as well, just for myself and where I think GIS, want to evaluate really where it is here in the district and where it really should go, and how do we go methodically from here to there. So I've spent a lot of time the last couple of weeks just organizing all the thoughts that have come in my head over the last year. What do I want to work on? What do I think will benefit from? How do we make things better? Trying to break that down so that I can methodically tackle that and, start building a program instead of constantly reacting to the need of. So that's where I'm at. I'm looking forward. So
That's good.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And that completes, my attempt at Buzz's report. If there aren't any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
You've referred in the past recently to the difference in the cost of the vehicles. And so my question is, will it be part of the budget process or somewhere where we reassess that schedule?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because board policy, soon to be renamed, capital planning, states that annually the chief will present to you an updated capital improvement project, process and document. So we will be doing that as part of the budget process. And really, you know, we placed our vehicles into that queue based on industry standard replacement schedules. And that's part of the evaluation process we're gonna dive into after the holidays is, well, we say we need these then, when do we need to order them? And because it was always, I'll toss it in that fiscal year, that's when we'll order it, because then we get it that fiscal year. And so it's gonna be, it'll be part of the grand update this year, because we have to. I mean, the world's changed.
Thank you.
And I have a question. On the peer support program, who is providing the training for the people who will be the peer supporters?
So, Dr. Debbie Ritterbush, who's, directs Start Moving On Counseling, who's providing our mental health services. What she did is she attended the peer support class that the International Association of Firefighters built. and then with their blessings, tweaked it to better fit our region, or we added some pieces to make it better work for our region and our rural community and the resources available. Because a lot of the peer support stuff assumes you're in a more urban environment where there's a ton of resources all over the place. And so she adapted it specific to our region, and then she provides the training with her staff.
Chief, mentioned that with new apparatus, that someone's there to measure and size and see what needs to go where. Do we as a fire district have equipment that is so unique that we can't order a standardized piece of apparatus if there is such a thing, therefore price reduced, delivery shortened?
No. And short answer, no. So their fire service, 200 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. And that's why they can charge what they charge, and that's why they can only build 3,000 a year, is because everybody wants different. But to answer your question, our spec is kind of boilerplate. It really is boilerplate, you know. And when I say we go through and confirm things, it's, you know, different. So back east, the trucks don't carry a drug box because they don't have medics. So our truck, we have to modify one of the compartments to hold another compartment to meet state law that has a locking box for a drug box. So it's those finite things that are specific to Arizona state law, or a lot of engines don't carry the rescue equipment we do, so we make sure that we've developed a system on how we carry our ropes and our rescue equipment, because a lot of larger agencies have a rescue truck just for rescue, and we have rescue gear on all of our engines. So like, our guys aren't in there, you know, with chip boost drawing up a custom car. They're just making small modifications to the stock component to make sure it fits our rescue gear, our EMS gear, and things like that. But no, we're building a pretty we build pretty bare bones apparatus with not a lot of bells and whistles.
And lastly, I've been here long enough to see different GIS personnel come to your office, your office. And you're the first one that I am pleasantly surprised to see and to get a feel that you feel that you have an absolute vital, important role in this district through the work that you do. And the fact that you realize that, yeah, you are part of the strategic plan. There are parts of those goals and objectives and tactics and all that sort of stuff to get to where you need to go to get the job done. And it makes for a complete picture of this administration that GIS is as vital as any other part, if not more so. And it's a good feeling to have that you're not there just to draw a map. You've got a lot of irons in the fire in a lot of different things, and I see that, and I appreciate that. So to that, and probably the rest of the board members do also, thank you for that view, that vision that you have.
I appreciate those words and can agree with you. And I have to say, sometimes him just drawing a map makes my week, and that's for next month. He's moved the needle in a way it hasn't been moved yet on conceptualizing uptown properties in Station 4 with his capacity to take scribbles from me and turn it into a functional map that we can share with the city. So it's even when he's just drawing a map, it's pretty darn cool too.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
We're Baker.
All right, Mr. Chair, Board, thank you for having me this evening. I didn't include this on my slide, but thank you, Kim, for putting the picture on there. So I had the unique opportunity last month to work with some of our local youth leaders at the Mingus Union FFA officer team. And in partnership with Sedona Fire, the Sedona Verde Valley Firefighter Charities, and the Mingus Union FFA, we were able to take a generous donation from the firefighter charities of nearly $700 and buy turkeys for some of the needy families around the Sedona Verde Valley area. So I got to partner with those, future leaders in our communities. And I'm happy to announce that there's a few of them that are either participating in the VAC Fire 1 and 2 program or anticipate taking Fire 1 and 2 in college and had a lot of questions about Sedona Fire and, are excited about the opportunity to possibly test next summer with them. Some of them are seniors in high school.
We're finding them anywhere we can.
It's a good recruiting trip as well, for Sedona Fire, but more importantly, giving back to the community and working with some of those local youth leaders. It was a great opportunity. So thanks for putting that picture in there for me, Kim, so I could report out on that. Training's still training. We're ramping up. We completed our classroom portion of our driver's training, last month, which we hadn't done in a number of years. And then recently, last week, just completed the hands-on portion for all 3 shifts, for all personnel, to get that annual driver's training back up and running to include both the classroom and hands-on portion. Working with Captain Kurtz right now on doing a non-ops, defensive driver course, for all of our non-operational staff, but that are still from time to time or, to and from, work driving SFV vehicles. So Captain Kurtz and I are working on a date with Heidi to find out what day will work where we can hold 2 sessions so we don't interrupt services next door and can alternate, have a class in the morning and then maybe one in the afternoon to capture everybody. But just to give everybody a good refresher on policy, law, procedure, and defensive driving techniques for all staff. So that's in the works. The electronic class and travel request form, that's been something we've talked about for years here, getting away from the paper class request form that we've used for 20 plus years. That's very outdated. Happy to report that Engineer Espial has done a fantastic job on it, and I know Matt has had a hand in that as well from a GIS standpoint. So the form will be very comprehensive, all electronic, and when an individual fills it out, submits it, it'll go to that next level supervisor that needs to sign with all costs associated. That individual will then approve it, and it'll go to the final approval office directly via email. So we'll eliminate a lot of the inter-office delays that we've encountered over the years and lost pieces of mail where those class requests didn't get in a timely fashion. It'll be immediate now. So we're working on that. Again, it's very comprehensive to include multiple forms when you click certain buttons. And Engineer Espial's done a fantastic job on it. I believe he rolled it out last week. I was out of town to management, and then we'll get hopefully close on finalizing that after the beginning of the new year. So pretty exciting stuff for those of us that have suffered through the class request forms we've had for 20 years here. The 2024 annual training plan that I've talked about at a couple meetings was finalized. We rolled that out to all staff. Had some great feedback on it thus far, meeting with a couple captains this week to clarify a few things. Along with that, I met with the training officers from Copper Canyon, Verde Valley, and Cottonwood Fire. Showed them the training plan, and I believe the intent from all 3 agencies is to adopt that training plan.
Okay.
And we're gonna reword it into the Sedona Verde Valley regional training plan. And had future conversations after that meeting with the training officer down at Verde Valley. They're actually looking at coordinating their annual hose training the same time we do now. And a lot of the pump testing relatively close to the same time we do now. So if there's any coverage issues, we can help with neighboring agencies and hopefully facilitate some multi-agency training that coincides with that training plan. So it's a known date, a known time, and a known location for all that. One of which is what I'll talk about here in a minute. We'll start seeing the fruits of some of that labor right away. So that was good to get that out. And it's more of a guiding template is what I'm telling the company officers versus you shall do this this week. But if you follow that template, all the required mandated training will be completed for 2024 at a minimum.
How does completion of any aspect of it come back to you or the monitor for that?
So in ESO, we'll create, I'm gonna work with Engineer Espial and see if it's possible to create monthly training reports that'll get out in front of the captains so they can see where they're at as a shift, as a whole, monthly, and not wait till the end of the year like we've done in the past. So if there's any deficiencies identified, they can correct that. Any trainings they need to conduct, they can do that right then and there. And at the end of the year, we'll pull that annual training report to see where all those ISO mandates and hours as far as fire and EMS mandates are concerned, you know, relative to external and internal standards. That answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, so next one is the initial work started on our 2024 Captain Candidate Leadership Academy. So we've talked about this for years as well. This is one of the major points in my initial one-year rollout plan to Chief Coyle and Chief Mazulis and HR is to provide a leadership training to current billeted captains and captains that have task books open that are not yet billeted, that they're working on getting billeted. And along with Chief Coyle, give them a known what the expectations are of a company officer here at Sedona Fire, what your requirements are, and you know what we want to see from those company officers, and better prepare them for the position. Not necessarily the test, but once they test and are in that role, they've got, you know, a 30 to 40 hour training that we can do internal here, and really get them up to speed as far as what the requirements of that job will entail before they're actually in the seat. So we're working on that. It's a real rough agenda right now. I sent it to Chief Lekowski, Chief Coyle, and Chief Mazulis last week. Got some great feedback, tweaked a couple things on it, and we're going to continue fine-tuning that with anticipating rolling that out. I believe it's the second week in August of 2024. So more details to come on that. The A-Shift battalion level extrication training, again, another training that should be held annually, and it's been some time since we've done that. We're starting that. It says January 19th. I think I had a typo when I sent this to Kim. It's January 9th. It'll be at the Verde Valley Regional Training Center. I was down there last week setting up the 4 different pits that we'll have, and we're going to do a scenario-based training. So it's not going to be come out and here's the A post, go ahead and cut it like we've kind of done in the past. It'll be a scenario-based training where we're going to break A-shifters coming off duty into 2 separate groups and run each group through 2 separate scenarios. And we're going to put this on a 3-year rotation. So next year will be B shift and C shift, and then start over again with A shift. So every year, an entire battalion will get up to speed on new extrication equipment and techniques we have, policy, procedure, and have a chance to exercise a lot of that real time with our 3 subject matter experts that we have for our extrication program. So that'll be January 9th, 2024 coming up. And we've invited Verde Valley, Copper Canyon, and Cottonwood Fire to that. And I believe Verde Valley's sending an engine, and Cottonwood is going to try their best to make it as well. So again, another opportunity to mirror that training that they have. They've got a couple cars out there as well, and start picking up some regionalization and multi-agency training, which I think will benefit us long term.
Chief, I have a question about that. Just recently I've read, is it so that electric vehicles are more difficult for
They are, and so one of the things we've talked about with those 3 SMEs, the subject matter experts we have in extrication, is EV precautions, electric vehicle precautions, as far as extrication, where and when not to cut those, as far as suppressing those when they do catch on fire. So that would be something that they'll be including in that training as well, and briefing the A-Shift battalion on that training during that extrication drill. And finally, the initial work started on our training policies and procedures, migrating what we have on SharePoint to Lexapool. I thought it was going to be a quick and easy process, and the more I dive into it, it is not going to be quick and easy at all. So I've had multiple calls with our rep at Lexapool. He's expressed his frustration and some of the things we have going on in there, but we're working to improve that and, again, standardize a lot of that stuff, the knowns that Chief Coyle and Chief Mazulis talked about as far as policy procedure, the job descriptions, in hopes that, again, I don't want to put a timeline on it yet, but in hopes that in the future, we will have one central location where all our policies, procedures, job descriptions, employee handbooks, everything will be on for employees to go and find. Because right now it's split between SharePoint, which is Easter egg, and Lexapool, which has things finalized and in draft status, and crews are uncertain on what is what a lot of the time. So I have to call whoever's in charge of that specific division to get, the right information. So we are working on that. Captain Arwine, who's currently on light duty this week, has been helping me, a ton. We've got a lot of the stuff migrated over already in draft status. So I talked to the Lexipol coordinator. He created a subfolder for us, which I've gone and created multiple subfolders. So as each division starts getting policies finalized, recreated, finalized, or ready for migration, we can drop it in the tentative folder for that specific division. And as soon as we punch the button and tell Lexipol to go, they'll start pulling that out of the folders, putting it in their correct format and dropping it into the right chapters, is what they call it, for each division and each discipline. So it's gonna be a haul to get that done, but I know we'll get it done. And I just don't wanna put a timeline on that yet. But we are starting to move the training policies, procedures, ICSs, MCSs, a lot of those over there already. And we'll keep working on it. And that is my report. Any questions?
I do have one
Yes, ma'am.
question. It's related to the Captain's Candidates Academy. One of the things that I think I've heard is that as you progress up the ladder in the fire service, more of the challenges you face are not strictly the fire policy and procedure.
Correct. Yeah,
That's correct. So my question is, what are you thinking in terms of both teaching and teachers?
so right now, again, it's in a very rough draft format. I mean, I've only worked on it for a week or so and got it to the other managers to take a look at. But right now, a lot of it, we're incorporating a large section of it for HR, for our HR to come in and discuss some of the challenges they're seeing from current captains and personnel, as far as workers' comp documentation, corrective behavior documentation, the other issues, some watch-out situations to keep everybody out of hot water. So HR is going to have a large portion in that as far as personnel matters, annual evaluations. That'll be a portion of that. And then I talked to Chief Mazulis. We're looking at possibly recruiting some outside fire chiefs, senior fire chiefs from the area to come in and do a roundtable. So some of their experiences they've encountered as working up through the ranks as a company officer, some of the things they anticipated, perceptions versus realities when they actually got in the job, which, what they thought was going to happen, what actually happened. So real world experience, and then give the candidates, that are, or the students that are in that course an opportunity to do a Q&A with them and try to learn best they can from some of that senior leadership. But a large portion of that will be tailored to personnel issues, time management issues, running a crew, again, the expectations that Sedona Fire has on company officers. And then the latter part of that training will be running them through scenario-based training. So crew meetings, first meeting as a company officer with your crew, how to set the table, what your expectations of your crew should be, and reporting out to your battalion chief on that. And then as we work through that, more of the tactical simulators, wildland, structure fire, vehicle accidents, so forth.
Well, I'm just thinking about what Chief Coyle was talking about relative to his NATO trip and the similarities that exist outside the fire service with the fire service. And so the one thought I have is if this is skill building, then there's a lot of areas that don't fall neatly into HR, but that are critical skills for leadership. And they relate outside of the fire service. Clearly, someone coming in as a senior fire service leader is going to have more credibility. But I just encourage you to think outside the fire service for some of the skill building on some of those soft issues that get us all into trouble some days.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. I'm open to any and all suggestions to make this as beneficial and productive as possible. So definitely take that into consideration. I'll talk to Chief Mazulis and see what we can make happen. Thank you. Other questions?
Thank you.
All right, so it says that there, I believe maybe I just spoke about this at our early December meeting, but this is us me and area chiefs speaking at the, it was a community forum for folks interested in the fire service. And it was just, we all talked a little bit about our organization and its culture. And then, it was just an open Q&A with these young men and women. And, it was the second one we've done, and it was pretty successful. Got a lot of really good feedback. And, since these guys all focused heavily on what we're doing internally, I'm gonna focus a little bit on some of the things I've been doing externally this past month. In addition to this, I was asked to be keynote speaker for the Yavapai College Fire Science graduation, and I fumbled through that okay. Again, some good feedback, so maybe I said something that'll stick. The cool thing was two of the young adults in that class, their fathers were mentors to me here, so seeing that next generation coming up and graduating is pretty cool. Also working a lot with primarily Danny Johnson, seeing as he's got the two other districts in the area, and really working on, you know, we met separately but with the same intentions with another healthcare provider for our organizational healthcare plan, and we're not intent on making any changes at this time, but doing some pre-work before budget season to see if we can leverage and get better pricing for our healthcare for our employees, and kind of evaluate what the two are. There's two offerings out there now. There's been one for a while, and it's always good in my experience with negotiating healthcare here in the past to have some competition, because then you like to rest on your laurels and just, oh, rates are going up again, and we say okay, and we budget it. And I'd like to challenge that. And while we can't legally, we can't have a regional pool for healthcare, we can definitely leverage potentially numbers to say, hey, to push them to provide more services in our region. So there's benefit to it. Other thing we're continuing to work on is the IGA for community risk reduction, sharing resources. And I've been meeting with dispatch. They're doing a lot of upgrades are coming down the pipe, and we've got, in addition to that, Chief Lakowski and I have been working on Senate Bill 4609, which January 1st mandates that all our ambulances are GPS enabled and tracked. And as you can imagine, that's quite a bit of infrastructure you have to purchase. And this isn't Ed and Buzz being lazy. The state debated the rules for this. The Senate bill was approved in July. The state debated the rules for the Senate bill, and it presented to us December 7th, and said, starting January 1st, this is the new mandate. And next slide, please. They said, here we go. Here's the waiver form. That was not actually, they said, here's the waiver form that you can waiver doing it on January 1st. And so, but the costs are we've got a lot of the hardware already in place, but I've asked Buzz to submit the waiver. Not that I want to put it off, but believe it or not, we're entering into our renegotiation with the comm center. It's been 5 years, and they're going to be required to do some stuff to support many of the things we may do, have this tracking system enabled, and that has to be part of the negotiation, because I don't want to be in a position where we find something that works for the fire districts, but then Cottonwood hands us a bill for $100,000 to upgrade their stuff. We're going to have, there's more to negotiate than just trying to meet the state standards. Yet again, another unfunded mandate from the state.
That's what I wanted to ask. Did the state provide some?
So the state did work with two companies that do software to develop a grant process. Again, we've got the two software companies that they do a lot of neat stuff. I'm not completely sold yet, because they also do a lot of neat stuff that software we already pay for does. And at 3 in the morning, having our guys have to flip through the 5 apps to, this one, and hit en route, because that's part of the legislation. They have to electronically document en route and on scene, and it has to be GPS tracked. So I want a simple single screen that has big buttons that says going, leaving, staying, so that at 3 in the morning you know, it's, because data's only as good as, you know, the inputs. And so if it's difficult to navigate, and so while they'll cover the software and some of the hardware for 3 years, we all know 3 years goes by fast. And what I'm seeing a lot of agencies in Arizona do is get some whiz-bang software, and computers after 3 years are junk anymore. And so I want us to get the waiver and slow our roll and look for an appropriate solution for Sedona. And a big part of that is dispatch, and the current software they're in for dispatch is about 5 versions behind the latest standard. And so they have to agree to upgrade to that point to get a lot of the stuff that's available for us. So I'm not rushing it because there's a lot of costs associated. And then last thing is, 2 days ago, Chief Freitag from CAFMA reached out, and it was a surprise to me, and I don't have much information for you, but a couple of the county supervisors have started a swirl about Yavapai County Consolidated Fire District. And more to come. Like I said, it was an introductory email I got 2 days ago, and, you know, I expressed some of the concerns I have as Sedona Fire's rep, and if we just jumped right into being a countywide fire district, you know, there's some questions about larger districts subsidizing. You know, if you gotta have like resources, an Orange County model or an LA County model, and suddenly our taxpayers are funding the same staffed engine in Seligman that we have here, the county has a lot of work to do. So this came out of nowhere. It's come up in the past in conversation, but I don't know why there's a push. But we hope to have a meeting in the next month, and hopefully I'll have something to report at the next board meeting. But that's just kind of the stuff that's out there floating around. You can see our call summaries. We may hit a new record this year. This slide is a bit old. We are currently at we're currently at 4,897 calls, so we might hit 500 for the first time this year, or 5,000. My fault. More than we've ever run anyway. What's that? To date, that's more than we've ever run. Oh yeah, we're already at record call volume, but it'll be 5K. Yeah, but 5K is just kind of a notable benchmark. As you can see, Station 5 once again is bringing up the rear with pride, and doing a good job. Our aggregated median turnout time has gone down since we started reporting this a few months ago by another few seconds to 1 minute. I believe it was 1:51 last month. And then that travel time I'm suspect of, and again, I've explained in the past that travel time could be, it's all dependent on where the calls are, you know, and if we don't have a bunch that are on the outskirts, then that time will go down. But my favorite one, once again, is the hour, 25 minutes average ambulance time, and just a good reminder that an EMS call keeps that ambulance out of the loop for quite a bit. And purchase orders over 10K, you can see that from CR Capital. Gabe spoke to that. And then some appreciation letters. There's me pretending to eat a horrible stale donut. And that ends the chief's report.
Okay, well, thank you, Chief, for that. Do we have
Questions?
any questions for the Chief? I was gonna ask you, I thought we, or did we put that level of purchase orders over? Did we bump that up to 50?
We can purchase up to 50 without authorization, but we report out anything over 10. And I am happy to do that because in the interest of time, I would rather not report everything, but over 10 is significant to me. But I'd rather not tell you we spent $500 on Band-Aids and go through the whole list, or it would be mind numbing. I would rather not do that. When we're paying bills.
Okay. Thank you again for your report. The next item on the agenda is discussion possible action disposal of decommissioned SCBA packs and associated equipment.
Yeah, so this one doesn't require board approval. I asked that it be listed as discussing possible action in the event you are adamantly opposed to what we want to do. So essentially, we bought our new air packs September of 2022 and received them the spring of this year. They're in service now. Our old packs are out of service and in storage. We worked with the manufacturer, and because I want to get some money back, and they are outdated. And the manufacturer stated that we could, in the market right now, get about $50 a pack. And so, but if we did it, if we sold them as $50 a pack, we'd have to put a legal rider in there that, you know, we don't know if these will work and if they're certified. If we wanted to certify them so that we could say selling certified used packs, cost us $150 a pack to have them certified. And so what I asked our air pack gurus to do is, I think we've got about 62 of them. I asked them to build 2 20-pack sets of the best of the work, you know, the best of the used ones. And we reached out to the region, and Coconino Community College and the high school career and technical education campus has expressed interest in the packs. Now, if we were to donate them, they would have to pay $150 a pack to get them certified. And then the bottles that we have for the packs are end of lifing in a year to 2 years, depending on the batch. Those are about $1,000 a piece. So they essentially, half of them got about a year of life left in them. The other half have about 2 years of life left in them. And then we would, if we kept them, we would just dispose them, because anybody that gets a hold of them has to dispose them. So I spoke with both campuses and said, hey, packs were donated, and you knew full well you're going to have to spend $20,000 in the next year and a half to replace the bottles. Is that something that interests you? And they've stated yes. And so, selfishly, there's no market for used air packs. And to further complicate it, we had some first-gen communications equipment we bought with those packs 10 years ago. And as it failed, the manufacturer didn't replace it, so we did some cuts and clips and gluing to eliminate the stuff and keep the packs working, but they're modified, basically. So there's no market for them. And if we could find a market for them, it's a net income of $2,000. So my intent is to work with those schools to see if we can coordinate a donation, and if it falls through, then we'll simply dispose of the packs. And as stated, after speaking with Gabe, because of the dollar amount, this doesn't require board approval, but I thought that it was important to bring it to your attention because I was shocked. I was thinking we'd get $2-3 grand out of each one, considering the fact that in September of 22, we had to spend $688,000 to replace them. But they are now just a disposable piece of equipment, and they hold no value.
I think the thing that concerns me about utilizing those used packs is obviously a liability issue with that.
Using them in-house?
If you donate them somewhere.
That was a big concern for me, and that's why when I say they get recertified, they go to the manufacturer for recertification, and they put their stamp of approval on it and state that they are serviceable. And selfishly, we just got the next generation of these packs, and selfishly, we're getting a lot of our new hires from Coconino and the high school, so they're training in the packs similar to what they're using here. We might get our next generation of folks, you know, with a little bit better training.
This is a work in progress. You're still working on.
Well, yes, I wasn't going to move forward until I explained it to you. And then we'd also have, I would imagine, Mr. Whittington, it'd be a one-page hold harmless. You know, we're donating these. Thou shalt take them to manufacturer for certification before use. And Sedona Viruses, have a nice day.
Yeah, I think when you bring this back to the board, when you're ready to make that move.
I didn't intend to.
Okay, otherwise, then I would have said, then put it in a board agendized communication so we can see the written pros and cons and a positive motion or for, or a motion against type of legal aspect of all this.
Well, this fits within our equipment disposal policies, and it doesn't require board action, but if that's your pleasure, I'll put together a formal document and make it a resolution or a actionable item on the next agenda. But per our policy, it doesn't require board interaction.
And I wouldn't worry about doing it then. I don't think it would be
I
our advantage to do that.
No, yeah, the policy permits the chief to do it without you, then it makes no sense to have you do it as long as the chief's happy with the release.
Well, and like I said, the big reason I wanted to bring it to the board is because to replace this equipment that now has no value, you approved the purchase of almost $700,000 worth of equipment. So I just wanted to have the conversation and be fully transparent that it's not a sidebar deal or we're hooking somebody up. We did our due diligence and they have no value. Which was a learning experience for me, because I can't believe something devalues so incredibly badly over just 10 years.
So then this item is basically just an information.
Exactly, and the reason I asked Kim to write it as a discussion possible action is if there are any huge hangups, then we can move forward. But yeah, it's within policy, and because of the value, there's no board action needed.
Then with that, keeping the board apprised of just what's going on with it is appreciated. And, thank you for keeping us abreast of all that. Helps a lot especially with people in our community that are watching this, the transparency part. So, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda up for discussion, possible action is proposed board meeting dates for 2024. And before us, there is a handout with all the dates. Traditionally, the last several years, we've had one date in November that was within the same week as Thanksgiving. Here, that isn't an issue. Therefore, all the dates as the third Tuesday of the month will stand. October 15th, yeah. 16th, 20th. Does anybody have any question about any of the dates?
They look good.
And I did check them against the calendar, so.
Mr. Chair, I had a point for consideration.
Yeah.
Just a thought, maybe for the first few months of the year, if it's practical, if the board would entertain maybe starting at an earlier time, because if we're gonna load some policy review onto the meetings, but that's at your discretion. I just thought, if we're gonna stack policies for review for the first few months of the year, if it would be more beneficial to start a little earlier, we could coordinate the staff. I just wanted to put that out there as a.
Otherwise, we'd create more of a workshop prior to a meeting, like.
Well, that was kind of my point. I don't have an opinion on it, but I was just thinking about, instead of coordinating another day, you have to come in for a workshop. If we were to start the meeting earlier in the day and be able to tie it into a meeting, then you'd still get out at a reasonable time for your schedule, and then you wouldn't have to have additional meetings on top of your board meetings. It was just a point for consideration.
Yeah, well, the fact that we're here early, it probably really doesn't matter what we call it, but we're here for that purpose. What do you foresee as a reasonable amount of time to dedicate to policy review?
So I think it's flexible, but ultimately what I imagine is monthly with the board packet, we'll present to you a policy package, if you will. Okay. And then, with edits and everything, and then you review it. And then, how we do it in the school board world is we have a first read, second read, and, you could treat it a few ways. You could treat the pre-work you do as first read, but then again, you might want to communicate with each other. So what we could do is give you the packets review week prior. You can notate any concerns you have. We come to the meeting and do what's called a first read, and then the board can discuss the policy. And, I like this. I don't want to change that. I like, and go back and forth. And then at the next meeting, we'd have an agenda item that said, second read of policies from last month, and since you had already ferreted everything out, the second reads are typically like, everybody good, motion second approved, and then we move on to the next batch. And that's just it's a clean way that I've seen to do it. And then, because then if, with the workshops, and then we could do a pre-workshop to the meetings and do that first read in a pre-workshop, and in the meeting, do the second read approvals. But like I said, I was just kind of envisioning ways to maybe add a little bit of time to the meetings, but then not add days of your week where you have to come in. It was just a thought. And like, there's no impact on staff either way.
Right.
It's just, time's time.
But if I could add something, I think one of the kind of key factors would be, how many policies do you want to be reviewing to be able to discuss? Because that's a lift, so if that would kind of dictate how much time we spent on review. If you wanted to do 6 of them, we could spend an hour.
Well,
It's a lot, though.
that if we're responsible for the policies and procedures of this fire district, that means them all.
No, understood, but how, like, you want a buffet every board meeting, or do you want the value menu? Because it's just, like, we can get through it quicker or slower, and some of the policies are pretty simple, but some of them have some complexity to them. So my suggestion is, whatever the board decides for workshops or added time to the board meeting, we take the first few months and see what our policy review process manifests into. And if 6 is too much, we shrink it, and if 6 is too few, we grow it. And then,
Mr. Whittington, how do other boards do this? Do they review all of them annually, or?
No, not annually, but when they go through the process, typically they'll submit to the board 5 at a shot, and they're all ready to go. If there are existing policies, they've redlined the changes. Lexipol, of course, sells theirs in mass, and oftentimes there's no real comparison to the Lexipol version and the one you had, they've acquired from Brenda or somebody else. And so those aren't redlined. But I've sat through many board meetings where the board was asked to review and approve 5 of them. Good or bad, that typically boils down to the board rubber stamping most of them. Very few. That's human nature, I suppose.
That makes sense. Is it SAPs, SOPs, all, or is there like a level that they tend to go down to, like?
The SOPs and SAPs are stopped at the chief's level, and they're reported to the board, but board approval not solicited.
I think that's the issue we have. Which ones do we need to evaluate, and which ones don't we need to? If it's an operational one.
My experience has been that you don't evaluate the SOPs or SAPs. You're informed that they're there. They're made available to you for review. You approve the policies and the policies only. SOPs.
Board and financial policies. Okay, yep, all right. I just want to make sure I was tracking.
And so if there's an operational policy that comes into question, it's not ultimately the responsibility of the board.
Well, ultimately, if there's litigation, the board's responsible for everything that comes out of the chief's office. That's a matter of, I'll just call it risk management. Very few boards drill into the weeds that deep.
Right.
They could, and they are, I don't want to kid you, you are responsible for everything that gets produced at this level. And if there was litigation about it, it would be thrown out in front of you, why didn't you review it? But to ask the board, presumably to ask the board to review it at that level would put you here for many hours a month. And most unpaid board members aren't willing to do that. And they start rubber stamping that stuff anyhow.
Yeah.
They haven't reviewed it, but it's stamped.
I could see there'd be a consequence if your subject matter expert makes a recommendation, if you choose to go a different direction, and then that seems like it would be more of a consequence than if you align with
Yeah, for sure.
at a certain level,
Yeah, I mean, you have a right to, let me say it another way. You're responsible for the output, ultimate output, but you've got your subject matter experts right here, and the record will reflect that you relied on them to get that thing taken care of. And I don't think that you've substantially affected your risk by spending 4 hours to an SOP or an SAP, rather than rely on the chief's recommendation.
I think the other issue of that is that what we know that we have in our handout, our handbooks, policies and procedures, is the entirety of the ones that we should be concerned with versus some that, yeah, let's bring that. No, we don't need all of this. We haven't had an opportunity to look at the totality of all the policies, see that, yeah, we don't need those. And I'd like to get more input from the rest of the board to see what their point of view is, but we don't know what we don't know. And we only know what we have in our little 3-ring binder. So if that's the totality of them all, then maybe we're okay. But if it isn't, then we need to know that.
So could I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we could review what I would call a list of the policies, SOPs, SAPs, just a list, not all the content. As a board, we have the opportunity then to look at the list. I suspect the titles are fairly self-explanatory.
Driving in the rain, yes.
Yeah, and doing that, and then deciding on that if there's anything beyond the policies that are in the handbook that we feel we need to see. And then we can ask to see them, and then we've done our due diligence by at least looking at the entire list, and then reviewing a subset, the ones that we think we need to look at.
And once Jordan gets them all in there, just kidding, it's gonna be all of us, but once they're in Lexipol, which is gonna take some time to get them all right, but then y'all can just dial it up and look at whichever one you want. It'll be nice then.
And I think to Mr.
It's a
Whittington,
list, though.
Mr. Whittington's point, you know, is a setting operating procedure for how we pull a hose to a single-family residence. One, arguably, Mr. Soto is the only SME on the board that would have a conceptual understanding of that policy. But two, say we get sued by the homeowner because they read our policy and they saw the firefighter stop and do something that wasn't in policy. I would argue the board would never be held responsible for that operational procedure because it's just that. Yeah, as an elected, how could you ever be held responsible for, how a fire truck operates? That's so out of the realm of what you would be expected to do.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to that. That type of claim really argues that policy's either been adopted, or SOP has been adopted or implemented with negligence. And normally that's initially put to staff, management. You're responsible for that conduct by something called respondeat superior. Because they work for you, you're liable. Not individually, but as a board. And that's why you have insurance to cover those kinds of things. No one really expects you to pay attention to whether they're outfitting their trucks with a 2-inch or a 3-inch or a 4-inch hose. Probably the only one that has enough experience to have an instinct for that anyhow. I doubt if you want to put the board in a position where they actually have to learn enough to make a learned opinion about that or a learned comment to the chief. So you are, by definition, exposed as a matter of law because of a respondeat superior, but as a practical matter, your policy should not require that you review those. Then it adds an extra layer of responsibility on you. Your policy should be that you rely on your subject matter experts that work for you.
And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination trying to make it sound like, you know, hey, we don't know what's out there. I mean, obviously there are a lot of policies that we are unaware of. They're not of our concern, if you will, because they are operations, SOPs, whatever you have out there. But perhaps as Ellen mentioned, just a list that we could just check off just to start this ball rolling.
Well, I would suggest this, for January, we prepare for you to discuss the ones you are absolutely responsible for, the board handbook, you know, we're currently working on upgrading.
Top down
And, you know, I think, what are there, 18 in there? But a lot of them are,
there's rules, there's policies.
a lot of them don't need a lot of conversation. And then that'll give us first blush at the ones that you're absolutely responsible for and give us an idea of what the process, the time it takes to do it. And then the following month, we can start distributing you the lists and, you know, with time for you to say, you know, you could email me and say, hey, policy 1, policy 8, policy 6, I have more questions on, and we could try that for the next month. Would that work?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like,
anything would,
Hit the ones that you are absolutely responsible for first and get a feel for the process, and then,
and I think that's great. My only concern is, having been through the board handbook, it's a slog. So if we're gonna do the entire board handbook the first month, I'd like to suggest we break it into 2 parts.
no, I'd like to start with well, there's the handbook and then there's specific board policies, and then the handbook's kind of all the legal language and all the thou shalts and everything else, and then there's the policies on finance and recruitment, retention, and a lot of things you highlighted in your document. So we could start with the more fun stuff, the policy updates, and then dive into the handbook, or vice versa, whatever, you know.
yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, what do you have, any say on that, Janet?
I organized my handbook to make it easier, so,
I think personally, we've all gone through our handbook and updated, put them in order, and they were, you know, double-sided printed with non-numerical
Right.
ordered policies, and it made it difficult to find the ones you're looking for.
So we're gonna modify that. How about this, we're in the process of modifying it, and we'll present a draft for evaluation at the next board meeting.
Why don't we start with that? Let's start with that, and it'll get us a starting point, and then we could move, yeah, or whatever, we can move forward.
And are we
Is that a
going to,
consensus?
if we're gonna be discussing at that time, do we wanna start a little earlier?
I think starting earlier would be helpful,
Yeah, I agree.
and I think whether it's an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever the time may be.
What do we do, 30 minutes?
3 o'clock?
Yeah, you look, talking, 30 minutes goes by pretty quick when we start on something like that.
3 o'clock then.
3 o'clock?
and then if we need to do it every meeting too at 3 o'clock to get it accomplished.
For a time being, for,
Yeah.
say like for this first quarter of next year. Why don't we go ahead and do that, and make that, a 3 o'clock start, knowing that the first part of this meeting is dedicated to that, but also we're gonna get into budget workshops also. That's, we'll be going from policy to budget and then into the meeting. We'll be like this.
I think by March, based on Mr. Whittington's feedback, a bulk of the policies or I would argue all the policies that really you're directly responsible for will be reviewed and buttoned up, and then we can have a little section for, you know, you get your list and you're like, oh, I saw a couple I wanna talk about, and then we could, and then do budget stuff.
Okay. Then we're still on that, we're still on the dates with the board meetings. So let me go ahead and move, make a motion to approve the announced dates as presented, for 2024, for the Sedona Fire District's monthly meetings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that motion carries. These are the meeting dates for next year. Within that, we're looking for a 3 o'clock start, perhaps on the first 3 months. That sound reasonable? Okay. So for staff to just recognize that on the agenda, obviously it'll be posted on that agenda so the public would know that it's a 3 o'clock start, because it is an open meeting. We'll plan for that. And we could call that, 3 o'clock, it'll be, policies and procedures. I don't know if you want to team the word workshop to it, or,
Be an agendized item.
Just said, okay, be the first one at 3 o'clock. Does that sound okay, Bill, as far as laying it all out?
For the first reviews, because they're board policies, so they would be signed by you, but then if it's subsequent policies, you know, that I sign, it could be discussion. But, unless you change the approving authority, which I would caution against, because then you're getting in the weeds.
A lot of the policies haven't been updated in a long, long time.
We both talked about how glad we are. It's all, policies, procedures, it's not sexy job descriptions, but that's
That's who we are,
scaffolding, you know, you gotta build the rest of it. You gotta get them right.
building blocks. So, okay, any other discussion on that agendized item? 3 o'clock. Next item on the agenda is the board member items, discussion of board members' fire district related activities since the last board meeting. And I will start on my left with Janet.
Well, I went to the potluck, I'll be having my one-on-one with the chief, day after Christmas.
Day after Christmas.
And, that's all I can remember.
That's it? Hey, easy, you got an easy month. Ellen?
So, yeah, potluck, I look forward to my one-on-one for November with the chief in December, and
And to confirm, because you sent me 2 dates, it's the 27th.
27th, yes.
The one other email said the 21st.
Oh, yes, 27th,
Well,
yeah.
or Thursday.
Anyway, and, other than that, stepped up to do Scott's bills, but then Janet did Scott's bills. I'll do them in January.
But I'm still doing for Jean because Corey's not up to that yet, right?
Yeah, as soon as she does. As soon
Okay.
as she's up, then she'll have
Okay,
it.
so I'm still doing Jean.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Helen. Corey,
Yeah,
you've had a full month?
I had a full month in that I interviewed to be on the board. Attended the lovely potluck. It was really nice to get to mingle with people and staff. And attended the special, chief evals meeting. Yeah.
Okay, good, good. Being I'm involved with other organizations, I've had an opportunity to venture out in the Yavapai County a little bit more. And Yavapai Firewise is one of them. And we sat in on a meeting with the county, their emergency office of Emergency Management is what it is. And we meet with them twice a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And it's relatively focused on fire and fuels mitigation in the Yavapai County. And they talked about what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing in doing their lot cleanings and fuels remediation. And a lot of it is based on historical, where fires have been in the past and where they project fires may go in the future. And what they're really focusing on right now is anything from the Prescott side coming up towards towers and all that.
Yep.
And bug, and not going over the hill into Cottonwood, or starting over in Cottonwood, going up the hill and not going over into Prescott. Secondary to that is historically where fires have been, that they can now start doing their various fuels modifications and things like that. We came up in the conversation of, we meaning Sedona, that part of the overall plan with this fuels mitigations and evacuation plans is that we as Sedona utilize, is it Genesis that is that program for evacuations? There's a computer app or a program?
Well, the one that they just got, the one that the county just got.
Yeah.
Not familiar with it. We haven't had our in-briefing on it yet, but we used Esri products to make them the maps that we built
Right.
already.
Well, they recognized us for the work that we've done on the evacuation portion, Sedona and the village. And so, I sat a little bit taller because, you know, we're part of that area, so thank you guys for doing all that. And also, when we meet in the spring, I'd like to ask if perhaps Matt could come with us, because a lot of that is GIS generated maps and charts and based on data. And I know he may already have access to it, but he can see how it's utilized, maybe from a different point of view by others.
If he wants to.
Yeah, if you would allow that. So if he doesn't, it's no big deal. But that's just a request. We'll see what happens.
To explain my comment, I've gotten excited about things and I start telling him about it, and it's something that, like, he did when he was a toddler, and I'm just learning about, and I think it's super cool. So, like, yeah, if you wanna evaluate it, if it adds value, then absolutely, but his brain, I don't know what he knows.
Okay, alrighty. I also had an opportunity to go on a fuel mitigation inspection with Chief Booth, a private, single-family residence that they did. And we were there for a re-inspection to see how they get rid of the piles of stuff that they have cut. When you have neighbors all around you, because you just can't burn it, and to get rid of it is an expense. So they were working on a plan, but to see the work done and to see literally how much more healthy the plants looked, the trees, the junipers and the pinyon pines and all that, just because they were limbed up and trimmed down, everything looked pretty good. So that the homeowner was happy to see the involvement of the inspectors, and I don't know how happy they were to see me from the board, but nonetheless, it was an education on that. As the rest of the members mentioned, the potluck was a lot of fun. It's something we need to do more of. And that was followed by our workshop that we had with the chief on a collaborative evaluation process. And I want to thank Chief Coyle for the documents that he provided to us at one point on how to make this thing work. But then we had to dig deep and find him again, because now we're at that point where we're actually using it. So I think we made a lot of progress, and then hearing some of the reports that we have from staff on how these things all are going to kind of mix together. I'm looking forward to the next quarter so we can see what has been done, and then focus on what you project for the next quarter. That said, I want to thank you guys for all the work that staff has done, everybody, including our legal counsel here that they've done for us over the past year. What that really does is makes the year go by pretty darn fast, because everything is running very smooth. And believe it or not, that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, and it's appreciated by this board. And I look forward to going into 2024 with a lot of fresh faces and ideas, and a lot more involvement with everybody, including this board. So, with that said, happy holidays to all of you, and Happy New Year, and we will see you next year. All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Anybody going to Laughlin?
I didn't have to go for a wildland meeting, but I
Okay.
try to avoid that place.